I am here with Humza. You have been my client now for a good number of months.
September 4th, I think, was the start date. I believe
Sept-
so.
September 4th. Nice. So
Yeah.
that's one day before the birthday of Freddie Mercury, if I'm not mistaken. But someone correct me on that. So yeah, you've had a very interesting journey. So I think it will be pretty cool for us to chat on air, and I think there will definitely be some cool insights to others. So we hope to cover a good range of topics, or I hope to. Hopefully, we will get to do it. And yeah, so like maybe let's just start there. So first of all, I don't know, maybe if you want to say like sentence or two about yourself in the beginning. If not,
Sure.
also
Yeah.
okay.
Sure. So I've been just I guess what you could call amateur bodybuilder, not in terms of competing, but just in terms of my training goals, more along hypertrophy. I've been training for so I just turned 21 actually last week. So I've been training now for 5 years. So started pretty much right around my 16th birthday. And yeah, just main goal has always been muscle building, like body recomposition, just improving my physique as much as possible.
Yeah. And so one thing I will say is that some of the listeners, viewers might be aware of you to some extent because I shared. So we won't be covering this now in the beginning, this topic, but just as a bit of a teaser, we do plan to talk about this a little bit as well in this little podcast. But I shared some screenshots of a post that you made on Reddit, kind of just showing your transformation, and you've gotten a staggering amount of like gear accusations there, which was, I mean, I knew that the internet can be hostile and dumb and just ridiculous, but that just kind of took everything to a, I wouldn't say a whole new level because I have seen some really bad stuff before, but it was honestly just shocking and very infuriating. So I made a post about that. So we will kind of talk about that, like how valid is it to accuse you of using gear and being a fake natty. We will talk a little bit about this as well at some point during this podcast. So if people are not interested in that, like maybe check the timestamps. It will be referenced there where we are touching on it. So if you're interested in that, just click here. And if I'm not too lazy, I'm gonna put like a caption in there. So
You can even link the actual thread if people want to go through and see for themselves. I can send that to you.
oh yeah. That's a good idea if you're okay with it, of course. So
Yeah, it's still up there. I left every comment up there. So
yeah, maybe let's then just start in the beginning. So you have reached out to me because you wanted to get some assistance with no pun intended with getting leaner, right? So some guidance should be the better word. And so yeah, can you just maybe outline like what you had in mind, like what you were after as far as like your goals?
yeah, so the main goal was, yeah, like you said, getting leaner, but in terms of wanting to reach out for to get help from someone, it was mainly just the accountability of sticking with a goal and not so much in the sense of accountability into like staying on track with the actual diet, but more so with the actual goal. Because the way I am, I'm very like spontaneous. So sometimes it's hard for me to stay committed to one specific goal. So like what would happen in the past is I'd get decently lean, but then right away I would feel like if I was a little bit flat, I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm too small. I need to bulk up again. So I kind of wanted to have the guidance, but then also kind of someone to keep me accountable of actually following through with the goal and not just short-sightedly hop to another goal just because it's taking a little bit longer.
Right. So yeah, so you needed someone to basically get you out of your own head a little bit, like
Exactly, yeah.
yeah, or hold like stop your hand when you would be about to like press a button that you're not supposed to press at the time, like with calories or with training or something like that. Yeah, I mean, I think that is often the big benefit of this for a lot of people. Like one would think that, okay, someone who is going to reach out to someone is gonna be someone who just doesn't know what to do. So okay, just tell me, guide me, because I'm completely lost. But often it's actually that, like, I actually know what to do, and like you're probably perfectly ready, or at least very close to it, to like very successfully coach someone with training, dieting, gaining, whatever. It's just that when it comes to ourselves, we just cannot be quite as rational. And yeah, it's and that's pretty much where I'm at as well. Like if I was to get coaching from someone, it would be because of that. It's not because I'm completely lost. So it would be quite problematic if I was, I guess. I would be coming
Yeah,
out to you about that now. Go
yeah,
on.
and I kind of understand it from your perspective a bit as well, because I'm a work as a personal trainer. So I have people who have been training for like, multiple months, even up to a year. And after a while, I mean, there's only so much when it comes to just training in general, there's only so many variations you can do. So they get it after a while. They don't really need me there for the direct assistance, but like you said, it's more so that accountability of, showing up for the workouts, just having someone to like report to, whether even like diet wise. 100%. There's so many reasons to reach out other than just from a pure knowledge base.
Right, right. Now, so okay, cool. So actually, there are a couple of things that are interesting about your starting point with me, but maybe let's just touch a little bit on what you did before we got in contact, because you're one of those few people. So I know actually a lot of people, not know a lot of people reach out to me who have been lifting maybe since they were very young, or just in general lifting for a number of years already, but not many of them have been like you. Because from what I gathered and from what we talked on a call before we started the coaching process, like you pretty much did things pretty damn smartly from the get-go. Like you weren't one of those people who just screwed around with a bunch of nonsensical stuff and then eventually stumbled like years later onto the good path. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, of course, there's were things I wasn't doing as optimal as I'm doing now, but definitely like in terms of like the resources that I was like, if I look back at it, the resources that I first came across, they weren't, maybe they weren't the best, but they were definitely better than a lot of things. I started with like a super basic like 5x5 routine. So right away, the principle of like progressive overload right away, I was aware of and implementing. Like things like exercise selection, of course, like that's, graduated along, has progressed a long way. Like before, I would be kind of like married to certain exercises, and then once I found exercises that worked like better for my leverages and like my personal body, then of course that helped things. But yeah, from the beginning, definitely like I probably still had good resources, a lot better than most people starting out for sure.
And you even reached some pretty good strength feats, right? Like by the time we came in contact. So can you just share like what was your like best whatever deadlift and bench whatever?
Yeah. Yeah, so I started, like I said in the beginning, I started lifting when pretty much right on my 16th birthday. And then yeah, just through eating a lot of food. Luckily, one thing I did do well is I actually bulked for the first 2 years. So no cuts in between. I went straight from probably like 140 to like probably like 190, honestly, over like 2 years.
Oh, okay, okay.
Part of that was puberty as well. But yeah, I probably put on like 40, 50 pounds of, just weight. Obviously, all of it wasn't muscle, but that helped me progress my lifts pretty quickly. So by the time I was 18, uh, I did a 545 single on deadlift. I benched 100 kilos, so 225 for 8 reps. And then I was squatting 315 for 315 pounds for like 10 reps high bar. So this was all like 18, pretty much while I was still in high school. So my senior year of high school, yeah.
Right. Which is so I think that two things you can see from that right away is that like you have had some gift for this shit. I mean, it's I don't know if you realized that right away or which I like this about you, that like you're aware of the fact that you're a gifted person for this endeavor, which is great, because you're also not slacking because of that. But probably it was clear to you that at least like you're not a disadvantaged person when it comes to lifting and getting stronger and building muscle. And the other thing is, I mean, obviously, like you had to have done something right if you got to these numbers, like with a relatively linear progression kind of path. So I think it speaks to that. And yeah, I mean, so again, we will cover this in a bit more detail later, but I would try to cut in your kind of starting pictures
Yeah.
when you were 16. I mean, it's like just if someone looks at your shoulders at the time, it's not maybe not quite as obvious to some people when they're looking at these pictures, like how like good that bone structure is for this. But like you can see that like you have these wide like clavicles, you have just naturally broad shoulders. It's not muscle at that point, it's just that's how your bones are shaped. So maybe it's not as obvious because your waist is not as tiny as it is now, but like you can see the makings of like, okay, like if you reduce that weight with like very low body fat percentage, then it did like this could look actually pretty sick.
Yeah, just in terms of, I guess, seeing, like, realizing that I, maybe have like decent genetics for this. Honestly, for the first, honestly, up until this recent cut, I never really thought to myself that I have these above average genetics or anything, because I was always comparing myself to like other people I would see online. So like when I was first starting in fitness, I would be looking up to like David Lade and like
Yeah.
Matt Goes Fitness, Matt Ogus, and I saw these people as the pinnacle. So even though I was maybe growing a little bit more than my peers, like I was kind of, the bar was set up here for me.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, when I say that I was comparing myself to them, it wasn't in like a negative outlook, like, oh, why aren't I there yet? It was more so like motivational. And I never, once questioned, tried to justify, oh, like maybe these people are using drugs or these people just have better genetics. My mindset was, if they're there, then why can't I be there? It's just more time. So I had such a positive outlook on it. So
Yeah.
I was humble in terms of, I didn't think that I was anything crazy, but I, comparing myself to them, I use it as motivation mostly.
Yeah. And I would say that if I'm looking at your physique, like there is some of it is bone structure, like from the front, like if you just like stand there like relaxed, then like I mean, I don't know. Maybe we should just talk about it in the beginning. I don't know. Okay, keep putting these teasers, throwing these teasers in, but then like, but anyway, like no, let's keep it for later to keep more people listening. But like, if I look at you from the front, like yeah, your shape is incredible. Like you have that very impressive V taper. Um, but again, like I know what I'm looking at, so I know that most of that is bone structure. So it's not even like muscles being like unrealistically big or anything. uh, the one area which is actually muscle and that is super super gifted, like way above average, you know what that's going to be.
The back, of course.
Of course, yeah. And you're very strong, so it makes sense that your back is on par with that. But again, I mean, do you know how long it took for you to get to those deadlift numbers that you mentioned?
Yeah, so very, very quickly. So a lot of people don't believe me when I say this, but the first time I ever deadlifted, I pulled 315.
Oh,
This was,
really?
yeah, first time ever. So this was
Wow.
maybe 4 or 5 months into training. But yeah, first time ever deadlifting for a single was 315 right away. And then
Whoa.
6 months after that, it was very shortly after that. I don't know the exact time frame, but I know four plates was in the horizon of maybe 2 to 3 months from that. And then when I was 16, I was doing, yeah, so 16, but believe it or not, before I turned 17, I would deadlifted 500 pounds. I wouldn't credit all of it just to like the back musculature, because I also do have like very, very long arms. So like from a leverage perspective, like I am basically built to deadlift. But I mean, part of deadlifting is obviously like your erectors, your lower back area. So I think it does, like if you look at the back, from, I guess if you look at pictures on my back, you can see that there's obviously I have good insertion with the lats, but there is quite a bit of like that thickness there. I know you
Definitely.
actually covered it on a video you made about back training recently
Hmm.
with how you realize that deadlifts probably do play a role.
Yeah.
And for me, like from my personal anecdote, I 100% agree.
Yeah, I know. I mean, so and you can even see it when you see someone shirtless deadlifting from the back, like as they are locking out. I mean, so okay, so this is not completely correct, because like also they are doing like a basically like the final stage of a like a pullover motion. Basically that's what they're replicating at the top position with the bar, right, as you're locking out. So that's part of what you're seeing, but like you still kind of see just everything like as it flexes, if you're looking at someone deadlifting from the back. And like basically the most impressive, or well, I mean your whole back is pretty crazy, but like if someone looks at kind of like the middle kind of lower area of your back, I mean basically that's the part that is like really really standing out on your back, that you can also see like really working when someone is deadlifting on a video shirtless. So yeah, it's leverages definitely play a part. So do you know your like reach, like what's your like wingspan?
I'm not sure about that, but I know I'm 5'10", and I have the same wingspan as my friend who's about 6'3", 6'2". So
Oh, okay.
it's definitely above average for my height.
Right. So
Yeah.
then it I mean it could be that he has a shorter one, but then you probably have like a 6'2" ish wingspan.
Yeah.
Like most people don't have a shorter wingspan than their height. So I have a relatively short one, and mine is like pretty much exactly what my height is. But no,
Yeah.
actually I might have a little bit shorter than my height actually. Anyway,
If
um
anyone looks at pictures or anything like on my Instagram, whatever, you'll be able to see that like my arms are definitely quite long.
Yeah, so when I'll give like a brief overview of like how we initiated, what our rough strategy was, and then like how the initial weeks, medium, like deep into the process weeks went.
Yeah. So yeah, so for my body at least, bulking has always been a lot more difficult than cutting, just from like an appetite perspective. So I remember by the end of my bulk, I was very sick of food. So I mean, I was remember asking you the question of what is too low in terms of calories, because even the prescribed calories that we started with, which was, I think we started around 2,400, I could have eaten half of that just from an appetite perspective. So we were kind of, I guess, finding that balance where not losing too quickly, but also not force feeding on a cut, because that just, doesn't seem right. So we started off pretty aggressively. I mean, we can go back and see in the log, but I think we were losing like probably 2 to 3 pounds a week, I think, for the first month. I
Yeah.
believe so. And the reason that we were okay with that though is because my performance in the gym was still perfect. So I was basically eating until I was content, and that ended up being closer to around like 2,000, 2,200 calories. And we started there, but then luckily, I think the rate of gain kind of just slowed down, its rate of loss kind of slowed down itself just as the weeks went by. So we never really had to make too much adjustments. I think we only really made one adjustment, calorie wise. So I guess strategy wise, kind of summarizing it up, was take advantage of that beginning portion where my appetite is super low, to get rid of like the easy fat in a sense in the beginning. And then obviously we'd have to coast the rate of loss a bit more to preserve muscle as I got leaner.
Yeah, it was basically now I'm looking at the log, and it's actually I remembered something a bit more like a bit scarier. Like basically first week was like, yeah, 0.9, then 2%. So that 2%, it's interesting that it came a little bit later, because like usually so when I give someone a spreadsheet, a little bit of an inside look, like I have like a little bit of a projection of roughly what I'm expecting to see. So there's like a range. And for the first week, it's always considerably bigger than for the other weeks of the coaching process, because it's pretty common to lose like 2-3% of body weight, even because, like, you drop a bunch of gut content and you lose water weight and everything. But yeah, so like 0.9%, then 2%, 0.6, 1.1, 0.4, 1.6. Always just when I was thinking for a long time that things would be kind of slowing down now. Like, okay, so far it was going pretty fast. Now it's kind of trending down. Then it would just speed up again. So things were going like very smoothly. And if I'm recalling correctly, like you really like didn't have any issues with hunger and food focus for a good while, for like a good 2 months or something like that.
Yeah, honestly, food focus and hunger was honestly never really an issue. I would say throughout the whole diet. There was a few instances where due to, I guess, reasons outside of my own discipline, like in terms of like drinking alcohol, sometimes that would lead to decisions that would kind of mess up the track a little bit. But in terms of like 90% of it was pretty much effortless, honestly, from a adherence standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was so the whole cutting process lasted like a little bit longer than what we had in mind. But it was like really just like the fine tuning at the end. But like it was basically like by the time where like when I first told, like, okay, like I mean, so this is like 7%, or like at the very worst it's 8. Like from that point, it was like 2-3 weeks before that, like really not that far
Yeah, I
off
think
when you.
three weeks after that we ended up stopping.
Yeah. It was honestly kind of crazy to see once again just how different people can be, because most people kind of like the typical journey for a lot of people, yeah, like down to like 15-ish% body fat is pretty smooth, and then like in that 15 to 10% zone, especially as we are approaching 10%, it's getting pretty tough at times. And for you, I mean, really like down to that point, it was like seemingly so easy that it was almost hard to believe. And I mean that just highlighted once again that, so yeah, you have good proportions, you have yeah, body fat distribution pretty good genetics for strength, and a good work ethic and whatever. All of these things are great, but I mean, man, the fact that you're just not this naturally hungry person, it's just unreal how much that can matter.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it all starts from like an early age. Even you can kind of see what your kind of habits were. Like, were you that kid that always overate, or were you that kid like for me, like my mom would have to like remind me to eat. So if I didn't say anything, then I would go the whole day maybe eating one meal and a little snack. So it started like that from being a kid. So I could tell that naturally, like my appetite was a bit lower. I also was quite active, so I always played sports. I was always moving around, and still I was this. You would think that would spike my appetite, but really I was always moving and not eating enough. That was kind of my history. And then just in terms of, I know things like just fidgeting more. I noticed that especially if I eat a lot, I'll just naturally be like at my desk and my leg will be just moving a bunch for no specific reasons. Even when it comes to like talking to people, I'll always make a lot of gestures with like my hands, and just naturally a more fidgety person. And matched with that low appetite, I think that's what really allows me to kind of not really struggle too much when it comes to dieting.
Yeah, and your starting calories and we do one or two adjustments during the
We
diet
did
now.
one. We did one.
One, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So then one could think that, okay, like if we lost weight like fairly aggressively in the beginning, then it makes sense that you didn't have to make adjustments. But like when someone has like a really adaptive metabolism, like it doesn't matter. Like you will have to make several probably over the course of the diet, because the very fast weight loss will not be very fast for very long. It becomes normal and then slow and then stalls. And then you need to make an adjustment. And then like that you will need to adjust like multiple times. So and your step count, and so you work as a personal trainer, but then your step count wasn't like crazy high, or was it for a brief period? Can you remind me?
Yeah, so it was I kept it I tracked it like pretty strictly. So I always made sure it was around a constant level. I think we started at 10,000. I think when we made that calorie adjustment, I just tried to get an average of 12,000. So it never went above 12,000. It was between, I think it was even 8,000 in the beginning, and then so 8 to 12,000 throughout the whole diet. So
Yeah.
nothing too crazy. It's actually not too difficult to get that amount of steps, especially because I was actually at university during the time as well. So a lot of the things I had to do, whether it's going to the gym or going to the grocery store, was walking. So most times I didn't even have to make a conscious effort to get extra steps on a treadmill or anything. I was just going about my day, and that's how much I ended up getting.
Is this like how close have you gotten to this in the past in terms of leanness?
Honestly, not too close. I think the leanest I ever got before was around 12%, I'd say, like low teens. And the reason wasn't because of like a discipline or not being able to get even leaner. It was more so just jumping goals, honestly, and not sticking to one goal.
Yeah. And how was the process of, like, once you went past your previous leanest self, um how was the process for you, psychologically, physiologically? On the psychological front, probably I can give some insights, because obviously I can experience more of that, like what's coming from you, than the physical side of things, right? Like only you can know that, really. um I'm asking because, like, for a lot of people, this is almost like it's almost like this mountaintop that it's like they need to get over once, and until they do that, it can just seem very daunting. I know it was like that from before I ever actually saw my abdominals. It was almost like this thing where I felt like something is it like it just meant to go wrong. Like I will never be able to do it, because like I've never done it before, and I just couldn't imagine myself being like that or achieving that goal. So, and once I've done it once, it was so much easier every time after that. So was there an element of that for you, that it was like disproportionately hard, or it wasn't that bad?
I mean, luckily it wasn't too bad. I think something that was really helping me mentally was my performance in the gym was still like really good. So I kind of knew that even pushing more than this wouldn't really, as long as my performance stays the same, I should be good from a muscle retention standpoint. From, I guess, my how I was actually feeling, like we touched on before, it was never really too difficult at any point in the diet. So I mean, I wasn't really hungry, so it's kind of like let's keep going. It was a very smooth process, actually. Not, it never really got. I can't really pinpoint one point where it got more difficult than another time.
Yeah, I mean, since we mentioned it before, we might as well just touch on it real briefly. Like that one point where you freaked out a little bit. Um, yeah, do you want to just briefly outline what happened there?
Yeah. So I'm a very obsessive person, and if one thing kind of throws me off the course, I get like it mentally takes a pretty big hit on me. It was kind of an instance where I was in university at the time, so a very common thing to do is on the weekends is everyone goes out. So usually what's involved with that is some type of like alcohol intake. So wanted to strategically participate in it. So I kind of set aside my calories for the day. I made sure I had enough to I even tracked the actual alcohol into the equation. So everything was going smooth. And then one thing with for me at least is I don't have any crazy appetite spikes unless I am like intoxicated, basically. So,
Yeah.
what kind of happened with that is I got like, yeah, just in the moment, I basically had like a mini sort of binge. I'd say I mean, probably some people are looking at me like, oh, it's not a binge, but I probably ate like 1,500 calories, maybe like 1,500 to 2,000 for me at least. I mean, I usually
Bro,
never.
you're insulting me now.
Yeah, it's nothing crazy or anything, but for me that's a enormous amount of food. And the biggest thing was though it felt like I couldn't really stop. And yeah, just that whole feeling in general just wasn't yeah, just took a big hit on me, I think mentally, because we were doing so good up until then.
Yeah.
But I mean, the aftermath was pretty much negligible because I think the day after, just because of I was obviously more full from the day before, so I didn't consume a lot of calories the day after. And then I think by 2 days from that I was already at a new low. So it didn't have it more was a bigger impact on my mental state, not really on our actual progress.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And my fear with that was never that, like, oh my God, like he eats, even if you said that you ate like 4,000 extra calories, my biggest fear would have not been that, like, now this is going to like set us back by any like really meaningful amount. It was simply exactly that, like, what is it going to do to you mentally? Because I have seen that with myself, certainly with people that I just know personally, certainly, but also with clients, unfortunately, that sometimes things go really well, and then there is like that one little breaking point, and if they were kind of like in a fragile mental state before regarding this whole like food and dieting thing, that can just like really set them off on this kind of just they never managed to regain that consistency and momentum that they had before. And I mean, looking back now, it makes sense that it didn't happen to you. And like maybe I was like overly fearful of that because like you didn't have this history, right? So it was never like that likely in your case. It was just like when I read your message, which was pretty scary to be fair. Probably I could like look it back. I mean, I'm pretty sure you used the word destroyed. So I read that in the morning when I woke up and I was like, oh no, like did this, like it went so well, like no. It was frustrating that something that went so smoothly was now set back because of what, like because of like a drunken overeating period. Like, oh man. But yeah, then by the time I communicated with you next, you were already like in a much better place.
I think having someone, especially like yourself, who's able to like, because when you're in that state, you're not thinking rationally. Like, and it's easy for me now to say, oh, you just messed up a little bit. Worst case, you derailed your progress by a day. But when you're in that moment, especially for someone like myself who's so like goal driven, like you think that the world's ending. Like I just wasted like a week of progress. Like you basically have all these irrational thoughts. So it definitely helped to have someone, who can, in that moment of time, kind of bring you back to like earth in a sense. And that I know that definitely sped up the process of me being like, it's not a big deal. Let's just carry on like usual.
Yeah, it's so crazy how your psychology changes as you're going through a diet. Um, and it was very interesting, especially to observe this with you, because with some people, it's maybe not as obvious because maybe like they were already like a little bit edgy to begin with. So it's like, okay, it's like this person is kind of neurotic from the get go, and maybe like they're slightly more neurotic, but like, like very neurotic and very, very neurotic. Like the difference between those two is not as apparent. But in your case, like you were so chill for like a long time, and then there was this clear like shift. And I wouldn't say that you were like freaking out about things. It's just like you were like noticeably more concerned about a lot of things that you were not concerned at all up until that point. And it's actually like I spent a good amount of time just thinking about this. Like I remember even kind of just briefly discussing it with Dave and Brian in our little WhatsApp group, like, why do you think this is? And I mean, nobody really had like a precise answer or like a reliable explanation for this, but I guess my kind of intuitive explanation would be something like you're getting leaner, so that's a signal for your body that like fuel and food and all of that stuff is scarce, and we are sort of approaching starvation sort of states, and also like we're not eating enough, so same thing. And so you're just kind of just becoming a little bit more on edge, like a bit more like like chronically stressed out, just so that you're always alert, so that if there is some like food source, then you're immediately ready to get to it. So like maybe it's that, I don't know what exactly it is, but with you it was like the contrast was so nicely visible, whereas with a lot of other people it's harder to notice.
I can kind of comment on why I
Well,
think there was that shift for me.
yeah.
In my case, I think what's slowly started to happen is in the beginning of the cut. I think just because it was, so effortless because I was already in a very overfed state. I was doing a lot more, I noticed. So I was going out a lot more. I was distracting myself. So I wasn't from like a mental standpoint, I wasn't actually thinking about, I'm cutting, I have this goal. I wasn't, it was kind of just something that was occurring in the background. And I think slowly as, things got a little bit more difficult compared from how it was in the beginning. And, I had to start saying, no to a few things just because it would, throw off my daily schedule. Um, and I think what that caused was I was thinking about it a lot more. So I think just mentally, if something's occupying your mind a lot more, then you tend to, it's only natural that you're going to overreact if something happens because it's a main thing that's occurring that you're constantly thinking about. So
Yeah.
for me, I think that would explain the shift for me at least.
Yep. Yep. That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, it's basically, so these things for me are always like the most dangerous when like something that's like evolutionarily, at least I assume, is kind of calibrated or like wired into us, is combined with some like just basic, like very understandable psychology. So in this case, I think that's what's happening. So like there is that biological drive, but at the same time there is that very understandable mindset that like, okay, I'm making all these sacrifices and I'm spending all this time thinking and planning and dealing with the sacrifice and whatever, then like god damn it, I might as well make sure that what I'm doing really works. And so I think the combo of that makes for just overthinking a lot of stuff. And yeah, like admittedly, I was worried at a time with you that like it's going to hit back at one point, especially because like it can still be a problem, definitely for me at this point, and I'm like older than you considerably. And I I think this is kind of generally true for people like as they get older. At least like I know that as I got older, like each year I spend at least an hour less thinking about myself and what I do and whatever, just overthinking things. When I was 16, it was maybe like the worst ever. By the time I was 20, it was better, but it was still really bad. By now, it's considerably better. So I don't know. Looking back now, during like on that period, are there things that you think were just really funny or maybe crazy, whatever that you were doing, or you never thought it got too bad for you?
I think there was definitely a point where, especially during the final months, where I was kind of obsessed with almost making sure that the diet was still as I guess effortless as possible. So I
Mm-hmm.
never wanted to put myself in a situation where maybe I was forced to work out at a different time or like anything that would throw off my like daily schedule just because I created a system for myself where, I'd almost intermittent fasting. So I'd fast for a certain portion of the day, I'd eat my first meal, then I would go to the gym. And if anything threw that off, like if someone proposed to do something that would be during my workout time or during my first meal time, that would definitely like mess with my head a lot. And then looking back at it, like I know I probably said no to a few too many things, especially when it got towards the end. Another like little thing I can remember is, especially towards the end, I think I was definitely more food focused. So the time that I did get to eat was a good time during the day. And if anyone wanted to talk to me or disrupt me while I was eating, I would immediately tell them to like go away, like just let me eat and then we can talk.
Oh yeah,
So those
nice.
were a few, yeah, those were a few little things that I noticed that behavioral wise definitely took a shift.
Okay, so when would you date that, when that more kind of like radical, I mean, relatively speaking, at least like radical approach started for you?
I would say probably so we started in, let's say we just started the diet like September 1st, just to make it easier timeline wise.
Yeah.
I think by November, November was probably when I started to notice that I was definitely becoming a lot more regimented. A lot more of my free time was on YouTube, just consuming fitness content. Basically, most of the thoughts that I had in a day were something to do with fitness.
Yeah, yeah. And if you and the like, don't interrupt me while I'm eating, that thing, when did that start?
Yeah, it all kind of went around the same time.
Oh, okay, okay.
One thing that kind of, I guess, also kind of fueled this obsessiveness is I was working out at the time in my like university gym. So this environment is pretty much all students. So I was getting into, I guess I was hitting like a new like leanness PR in a sense. This is about the same time I was also breaking that threshold of where I was before. And I think it was kind of, I was getting a lot of positive feedback from people around me. So 4 to 5 people a day almost were either giving me some type of compliment or asking me for some type of advice. And I think this really like fueled some obsessiveness with me, where it's like,
Hmm.
damn, like, I really want to like keep pushing because I'm getting all this positive feedback. I'm getting a lot of, messages on social media. So I think all of that combined with the diet itself getting harder definitely made for an obsessive kind of nature for me towards the end, like 100%.
Right, right, right. And when you ended the diet, like these things, like how long did it take for you to reverse? So when was the first time after that, for example, when someone could interrupt you while eating? Just curious.
Um, so I think so what's funny enough though is I actually, when the diet ended, that's when I actually came home from university. So just like naturally, I wasn't really like around as many people, so it kind of stopped for itself in a sense.
Hmm.
Um, but I definitely noticed that my kind of obsessive like thoughts and it definitely took up a lot less room in my mind, probably maybe a few weeks after the process was done, just because we also the shift from the deficit calories to the maintenance calories meant that I had a lot more flexibility. So I was
Yeah.
maintaining off of 2,500 calories. So that was about 600 or so above from our deficit. So in terms of like the day-to-day structure, it didn't have to be like as rigid. So that definitely alleviated a lot of the mental stress on making sure everything was a certain schedule in the day. So not too long, honestly. Pretty much as soon as we went to maintenance, most of it was kind of resolved.
So yeah, I think we can touch on the fact that near the, like, I don't know, a bit like further than the halfway point, or a bit farther into the process than the halfway point, you started using like a very moderate, I would actually call it like a low dose of ephedrine, to my suggestion actually. So like you inquired whether there's something that could make the process a bit like smoother, potentially speed it up a little bit, but at the very least make it a bit more pleasant. And I suggested that. So you, like where you live, you could you could get access to it. So that was a fortunate thing. Legally, like from an actual store, not from some like black market thing. So yeah, I don't know. whatever you think is relevant to say on that, like what maybe like what dose you used, how did it make you feel, how did it help, if it helped?
Yeah, so I guess from a perspective of like seeing which supplements I could potentially use, I was attracted to this one, especially because it was very cheap. So I like worst case scenario, if it doesn't work, I can just stop using it. It's not a huge investment. But I noticed when the biggest thing I liked about it, I think was also I there's not really any tolerance buildup, so it actually works better as you use it. So I like that because I was able to use it pretty much from that halfway point all the way up until the end. I didn't have to worry about like cycling on and off of it. And from an appetite suppression point, like I would probably be a hard person to like really see the effectiveness because naturally my appetite is lower.
Yeah.
It could partly be placebo, but I definitely noticed that, I wasn't hungry, so perhaps it was doing something. But it wasn't anything crazy. Like it wasn't something where as soon as we took it out, my appetite spiked up. So
Yeah.
I'd say it's worth giving a shot. But we started at a low dose and then I traded up a little bit from there. And I noticed the effects a bit more from a more like moderate dose. So I think the doses that I used most for most of it was 24 milligrams twice a day
Right.
with caffeine with both times. So
Hmm.
it's about I think a moderate dosage if you'd agree with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So I
definitely.
noticed that dosage was I definitely felt a little bit from that. I think when we started off with like just 8 or 16, I didn't really feel much. But
Mhm.
the doses that I mentioned before, that was the sweet spot.
Right. And otherwise, were you using uh caffeine and other stimulants? Like now it escapes me.
Yeah, so I was using caffeine quite regularly through the form of like coffee or pre-workouts. But I actually bought them in a tablet form just to take it directly when I would take the ephedrine as well. So I would be doing 200 milligrams of caffeine with each dosage. So by the end, my caffeine intake was actually pretty high. It was probably like 400 to 500, because I would have coffee on some of those days as well, like per day.
Right, right, right. And was there any like negative to it? Like did it impact your sleep at all? I mean, now it sounds like I'm like trying to like shill for ephedrine, but no,
Yeah.
I'm just actually curious.
So on effect on sleep wise, not at all. But I also seem to have a pretty high tolerance for like stimulants in general.
Hmm.
So I can have like even a coffee at like 6, 7 p.m. and still go to bed like 3 hours later for
Oh
whatever reason.
man.
I've always been a really easy sleeper. So like getting sleep without any interruption was never an issue for me.
But then do you get some actual like stimulation from, let's say, a coffee?
At this point, it's probably more placebo than it is.
Hmm.
Like I don't. I also drink coffee mostly for the taste, not really for the uh,
No,
like caffeine.
that's very
In a
very
sense.
mature.
Yeah. So and black
Yeah.
too. Nothing in it at all, just black.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't really think it has too much of an effect from an energy standpoint anymore. I probably have to go quite a bit higher to feel something.
Right, right, right. Yeah, let's just quickly touch on like how you train during the dieting phase.
Yes, yeah. So we were training 6 days a week, pretty much on par with what I was doing before. One thing I'd say one shift that I did notice was we were doing. I'd say before I was doing through my gaining phase, I was doing probably around like 16 sets on average for most muscle groups. And then I noticed with the training that you set up for me, it was closer to 12. And I think that's probably played a part in me being able to retain my strength, honestly, flawlessly. If we go back and look at the
Mm.
logs, I actually progressed for the first month, and then I was actually able to maintain that performance for the duration of the cut. I can't remember any instance where I lost any reps or any performance loss throughout even the later stages of the cut, which was honestly surprising on my end. But I guess from intelligent programming with like managing volume, we were luckily able to maintain all the performance.
Yeah, and it's that then I'm guessing because usually these things go hand in hand. But like, was there any time when you felt like the workouts are becoming a bit of a drag, which like that's pretty common during dieting to very low body fat percentages. But did you have any of that?
Yeah, so towards the last month, for sure, but it wasn't more so in terms of like an output standpoint. So I still felt just as strong. More so was the energy wise. So especially on some of the days, like I know like on the leg days for sure. Like by the end of it, it felt like I was kind of dragging my feet a little bit. But as long as I was able to mentally get locked in for that one set, I was able to perform just as good. So more of it was a effect on like my energy, but from a performance standpoint, really it was quite smooth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's your I would say that your journey, like how you got down there, is like a pretty good representation of how it if everything went well, and like no weird things, because that's another thing in your case, like there wasn't like a bunch of random things that came up, which often do, and when people talk about like why is it good to do these things like young, and people usually talk about like the muscle building potential and whatever, and that's like debatable, but that's like just a very serious practical benefit. Like if things don't crop up, if there are like no like injuries and travels and whatever, then yeah, things could be this linear and smooth. Of course, like the actual adherence while you're doing it, that comes into play as well. But usually things always take longer than what you would expect because things just come up. In your case, like really, I would say nothing really came up, except for that one little freak out moment when you deviated from the diet that one time. And other than that, this is pretty much like the ideal scenario when things can go this cleanly. The only small, like that one small phase where it was a bit more difficult is like near the end, where it was kind of like this dilemma of like, okay, like should you stop, should you not, and then it was like this challenging moment, which I think is challenging for any dieter, where it's just tough to make a decision. Like, am I lean enough for my liking? Am I not? Like what is really important to me now as far as like long term and like medium, short, long term goals, like gaining or getting even more shredded. So yeah, maybe we can just finish the diet part of this with that, and then like we can.
We can touch on that. Yeah, so in terms of like kind of realizing when to stop, um, I think the saying like the grass is always greener on the other side is so true because when I was on that midway point and I was kind of slowly starting to see like things I've never seen before just by getting to a new low body fat, it was kind of like wow, like I've never seen this before. Like I was honestly thinking in my head maybe I should just maintain this for the next year or so and just enjoy it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But then I think once you actually get there, you it's cool and all, like you can take good pictures, you get more compliments, but those things quickly start to fade from like from I guess from a like a motivational standpoint, and you kind of realize that like nothing, the stars aren't aligned, like just because you're shredded now there's not really any difference. And I know like if you have to think about your goals now, right? So for me, one thing that's held me back in the past is I've probably spent too much time cutting. So if I look back at the last 2 years, I've probably spent just as much time cutting as I have gaining. And I think once now that I've actually gotten to the point where I've gotten as lean as I've always wanted to been, as I've always wanted to be, and now that I've done it, it's been easier for me now to be like, okay, I've done it. I've accomplished this goal. Let me do what is going to be best for my long-term progress and not, my short-term satisfaction. So I kind of look at it more as now in investing. So I have to, invest the time, which would be into a lean bulk, and maybe I won't be 100%, satisfied with my composition, but I can shift my focus to other things like my training performance and kind of use that as a motivation to get me through this time. And I know the longer I spend now in that gaining phase and like actual a productive time period where I can put on muscle, that's what's going to get me to my end goal the fastest, which is like maxing out my natty potential versus, having all these stints where I'm cutting prematurely and kind of spinning my wheels in a sense.
Yeah, yeah. It's when in the beginning I mentioned that a lot of us, even if we were otherwise able to even coach others, because our knowledge is okay, or like it's satisfactory to make good progress, but or like we're just not able to be rational with ourselves, and usually that irrational mindset shifts things towards the more negative side. But I would say that this is like the one place where we actually see ourselves more positively, or one of the few places, because when we are the most shredded, at least without drugs, then for a lot of people we will kind of look too skinny. Like they will see more of the negative side of things, because like they see us in clothes, and maybe even if they see us without clothes, like yeah, like I liked you better when you were a bit bigger. Like there was more things to like grab on you, or maybe that's a male thing saying to females. I don't know, but
I
like
experienced that firsthand actually from family when I came home.
uh-huh.
They asked me if I was still working out. And it
Yeah,
was funny
yeah,
because here I am in my best shape ever
yeah,
and getting the most attention, but in clothes, they
yeah.
asked me if I even stopped working out. So I definitely experienced that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, so if you contrast like how much work goes into it, and also how we see ourselves when we are that lean, and how like other lifters see us as well, who know how much work goes into it, to be fair, versus like how much like just people around us not into fitness see us. It's almost like it's almost disrespectful. Like how dare you even think about my physique like that, like what it took to get there. But I mean, of course, that's just not how it works. I mean, they're being honest, and I mean, probably they are right. It's kind of like, if the average person thinks that, then that's how it is. Because I mean, ultimately, like most people are that, right? And if we are being honest, those are the ones that, if we want to impress someone, probably it's them, because those are the ones that are going to see us most often. But anyways, so it's very, very difficult to judge ourselves objectively. And when you look at your physique, it's just very hard to let go of that in that state when you're that lean. And I know exactly how it was for me. I mean, luckily, unlike you, I'm a hungry person. Luckily, my compulsive behavior and my instincts solved the issue for me. So for me, it wasn't too much of a dilemma, because I got fatter and heavier because I couldn't control myself. For you, I mean, this was one case where your gift could actually be something that could hold you back, because you could have stayed there, actually, like you really could have,
Yeah.
and you wouldn't even struggle that much, right?
The maintenance phase, the 3 weeks that we did was like I was eating just as much as I would want to just naturally, which is
Yeah.
quite surprising because you'd think that I would have a big uptake in my like appetite from dieting for so long, but just that transition to maintenance calories immediately took care of that. I even remember I was a little bit worried that we were kind of jumping too far. Like I almost couldn't believe in a sense that I could like eat this much food and still maintain, which was our peak condition, so like
Hmm.
7% body fat.
Yeah.
So from I was kind of almost a little bit worried that maybe we were gonna spill over a little bit. But from a transition standpoint, it was super, super smooth.
Yeah. It was funny when you could not believe that you could possibly eat 2,500 calories. I asked you that at the time, but was that part of it just like knowing other people's numbers that messed with your head?
Yeah, I think that the main thing was I never maintained or even got to this level of body fat. I think before I was always consuming a lot of content that said, this is not healthy, most people can't sustain this. And it's true. Like if I see it around me, it's 100% true. But I guess I didn't realize how much of an outlier I actually was. So for me, it was hard to believe. I thought that if to maintain this level of body fat, there has to be some strings attached. Like you have to either be like a professional cyclist and be burning a bunch of calories, or you
Yeah.
have to be, eating this super restrictive, like intermittent fasting type diet. But I guess if your body has a certain set point, which mine seems to be lower, then you can feel eat a normal amount of calories and still maintain it if that's what your body is naturally gravitating towards.
Yeah, and it's honestly so like so that's the cool thing about like working together with people and or just even knowing people, with different backgrounds and genetics and whatever that like for me, like I could just simply if I just coach two people in my life, like you and then some person who had like a very, very hard time even getting like down to 20% body fat, which does happen to some people, it's like how can someone with a straight face tell me that there is no such thing as a set point or settling point, that like no, it's just a calorie intake and activity levels and body fat percentage, like that's it. It's like okay, then how do you explain this? Like it's um yeah, it's not common, so I will say that like most people kind of, even if there was such a thing as a settling point, like most people would kind of settle in a similar range, but there are outliers. So, anyways, so yeah, I think we can. Well, actually, first question: do you need to jump like soon? Like, how much do I need to speed up? Not that I
No,
want to
we
keep you here for ages, but
yeah, I honestly I wanted to put it on a day where I didn't have to have any time constraints, so I'm good on time.
coolies.
I
Then
think I wanted to kind of add one more point on that like set point
yeah,
thing, if you don't mind. Yeah. I think one of the ways you can actually tell if if this is actually your true set point, or if you're not just being overly obsessive and like artificially lowering your set point to a certain amount, is like how you actually like feel. So like yeah, like I was yeah, like I was as an outlier, I'm maintaining a leaner physique, but I also, it's not just discipline, like I also feel completely fine. So I didn't have any dieting side effects. And I also, from a training perspective, I also was maintaining my performance 100%. So I think that my body was like displaying that, we're okay at this range. It wasn't just because I was very disciplined or, super structured. It was a combination of that, but then also just the feedback from my body showed me that, we're good here.
so yeah, I think now we could touch on what we concluded at the end. So you've had quite a bit of yeah, like just second thoughts over like what you should do. So like one thing that we just mentioned, that like you really could have stayed at even at that leanness that you achieved. Um and yeah, like can you just give us some insight? So like you got that lean, this was the leanest that you've ever gotten so far. What was your mindset at the time?
So my mindset getting there versus when I arrived definitely changed. So getting there, like I said before, the grass is always greener on the other side. So I thought that, once I'm at this level that I want to just maintain, I was thinking to myself, like, it's going to be very difficult to kind of lose this shape in a sense, which would inevitably happen if I were to start bulking again. But once I actually got to the point, I gave it a good 2 3 weeks, so I didn't immediately transition. There was some time to enjoy it for sure. I kind of just had to really think about what my longer term goals were. And I was happy with the leanness, of course, but I mean, just from a potential perspective, like a lifetime potential perspective, I'm still quite young, so it'd be, kind of stupid in a sense to hold myself back, um, from, achieving my natural potential just because I want to stay lean in the short term. So there definitely had to be that mindset shift, and this is something that like me and you both talked about in terms of doing what's going to be best for the future and not just what temporarily is going to look the best. So I want to take advantage of these years while I'm young, and while I still have that potential of progressive training. So that was kind of where my mindset was slowly shifting towards in the last few weeks. And then now, honestly, there's no problems at all from, even though in the last few, last month, it's been about a month since I've been gaining now. Obviously I'm not up a tremendous amount of weight, only a few pounds, but just from all the extra like water and stuff, I'm obviously not looking as sharp as I was before, but mentally it's taken no hit at all, because I've actually been able to separate now my motivation from how I look in the mirror right now to my progress in the gym. And from a training perspective, that enjoyment, the shift between just fighting to keep the same reps versus actually progressing week to week, that's brought me as much joy now as it has as the joy of getting leaner has, previously. So that's been super easy, on my like mental state, even though I'm slowly losing, my best condition.
Yeah. It's always interesting because like especially when a cut takes like quite long. I mean, not that like in the grand scheme of things. I mean, there are people who stay on diets for years, right? Like if they really need to lose a lot of weight, but like obviously you were fairly lean even when you started. So from that point, like 3.5 months is or 16 weeks is non-negligible. And like the last month of that, like when you're really like getting to like 7% body fat is ideally like what you did with training and the performance standards that you could maintain are phenomenal that you could do that. um Again, everything just went really really well as far as I'm concerned. And but even then, like the last month is probably like not going to be the most productive training phase that you ever had. So, and 1 month spent like that is again something that definitely leaves a mark, not a big one, but some. And it's enough to basically get slightly used to the fact of just not really enjoying your training because you're looking forward to the progress and you're excited about like what you can accomplish now is basically just either something to just get out of the way. Like either that's your mindset for some people, for some others they might enjoy it for the like the calorie burning effect. I know that I had that mindset for a while. Or at other times my mindset was that at least I'm not around food, so it's an easy 2 hours that I can spend without obsessing over food. So that was a positive. And then like getting back into the mindset of like, okay, like no, actually now we're looking to get better. It's almost like you need to remind yourself like, no, that's a thing. Like, people do that. They also train for that. It's just like I'm not used to it at the moment. So yeah, there is definitely that. And then the other thing is, yeah, like it's not easy, especially in that state when you just finished the cut, to convince someone. And we had like multiple rounds of like at first we kind of settled on one approach, right? Like it was sort of like gaining, but like very slowly, or
It was more so just staying within a given range.
yeah, yeah.
So I think and the funny thing is we were having these types of conversations, um, like I said, when I was kind of slowly getting towards that end stage. So I was kind of, like I said before, like the grass is always greener on the other side. I was kind of thinking like once I hit this stage, I want to stay there. But then once I actually got there, that's when the mindset more shifted towards, you know what, like let's kind of do what's most optimal versus what is gonna keep me the leanest in a sense.
Yeah, yeah. And it was it was honest like well, not a relief, because I mean it wouldn't have been a disaster or anything, because like again, like you have a lot of time um to do anything with your physique that you want. But on the other hand, I was happy that you did it, because that you made that decision, because um general like science tells us that like you can build muscle even like past your 60s, a good bit past your 60s. And perhaps that's really accurate, and like there's really like time is not a concern up until some really unique scenarios. But gaining is one of those things that um I would say that anytime you have a period in your life as a trainee where you can just go into a gaining phase and you can be more or less uninterrupted with these like little nuisance stuff, like take advantage of that, because gaining takes a long time. And as you get older, like really like more and more stuff will come up that will make it more challenging to like commit to like a long period of time where your training can be really productive for the most part. Like when you're younger, you take it for granted, but like like at first you just have a serious girlfriend, then like some very serious like work obligation, then maybe you get married, then kids, then more kids, then a wife and a lover. I mean, very difficult. Just kidding. No, like things get more complicated as time goes on. So like if you can like really commit to 6, 8, 12 or more months of gaining, uh do it, because you will never lose the benefits of that. Basically, like those are gains that are yours for life. And then a couple of years down the line you can look back at that period and be just so glad for it, because like you will see all those guys that come up after you that never had that and are now like perma cutting all the time. And you're like, well, I don't like perma cutting, but if I wanted to do that, I could afford it now because I put in those gaining months and years before. So I think it's a very wise decision, that you committed to that. And so yeah, maybe you can just briefly touch on that as well. So basically our strategy is gaining like, well, I mean, maybe I actually just tell us like how is it going so far? What is your experience with this gaining phase?
Yeah, yeah, just one point to mention on like the whole like mindset thing.
Yeah,
Um, so I think especially like as a like a natural, right? Like you have like your first like 5 years or so of good training where that's where you're gonna make most of your progress. So it kind of makes sense like if your goal is to get to your natural potential as quickly as possible, it's it only makes sense to spend those first, 5 or 6 years where you're going to make majority of your the gains that you're genetically supposed to make in a surplus because that's how you're going to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. So I think it was
yeah,
understanding that for me, it's like if I want to get to my end goal as quickly as possible, this is what's going to get me there, not, permacutting in a sense.
yeah. And I wouldn't even necessarily say that like that's where. So yeah, I mean, so yeah, like proportionally, definitely that's when you're. I mean, technically, like compared to how much you're making at other times, you're gonna make the most of it in the first month, probably. After that, like first 2 months. So like as time goes on, the less and less gains you make per unit of time. But definitely like the first 5 years, you're gonna make a lot of progress compared to the next 25 years after that. um but if it's productive training, of course.
Yeah, that's what I want to preface. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's not like looking back, I don't think it's necessarily like the best goal possible that you want to make those gains the fastest way possible. uh all else being equal, or is the best goal to get to your netty max the fastest way possible, because like the journey is beautiful, so why not make it longer? The problem is that like for a lot of people, those things might as well be the same, like getting to your Natty max at all or getting there the fastest way possible. Because again, things come up the more time you spend with this. So if you make it pretty fast, those big gains that you can make, then at least you made them for sure, and you don't need to worry whether you will be able to make it at all. So yeah, anything else to add to that?
Yeah, yes. I think from me like personally, like I have plenty of goals in terms of like hopefully building like some sort of like social media following and pursuing like business endeavors. So I know for me, the quicker I can get to that like natural max, like that's only gonna help that in the future. So for me personally, when I was looking at my own goals, this is what helped me. It's like, okay, if I commit to, a longer term gaining phase, then this is what's going to get me to my natty max, which in hindsight will help me with other goals that I'll have from a business perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. um and so yeah, how have you found this like month-ish, like 3 4 weeks, 3 weeks, right, of maintenance, then 4 weeks of gaining? So how have you found this so far?
Yeah, so I'll start with like the just flashback to the maintenance time. That was really nice because um luckily we pretty much got our maintenance calories spot on, it seems. So I actually didn't really rebound any type of weight at all.
Hmm.
Um, I was perhaps, like we said, maybe even in like a 50 calorie deficit or so. So it was nice because I was really able to enjoy like the look and take some of the best pictures I've ever taken. And yes, kind of, I guess, enjoy the work that we did the prior for 16 weeks. So that was a good time. So that kind of summarized like the 3 weeks maintenance period. And then the past month, um, definitely has been the most enjoyable from a training perspective. So like I've never been more excited to hit my like workouts just because I know I have, I guess, more of a probability from a progression standpoint, like whether it's like adding reps or adding load in the gym. So just from a progress standpoint, from the first 4 weeks, it's been unbelievable. So like I've probably increased my strength like a good 10 to like 15% just in the last month. Just I guess from dieting for so long previously to that. My body seems like it was just is responding quite well to progressive training now. So I mean, I've made insane strength gains in the last month, and it's been super motivating from a from a adherence standpoint with being excited to hit every single workout.
Yeah, and I mean, our goal is more or less the thing that I said so far, like that, like roughly, like 2 pounds ish, or I mean, I guess you could phrase it roughly as like roughly like a percent um gain per month for a 100 kilo person, but most people are not 100 kilos. So usually I just go for that like kilo, like 2 pounds ish per month, because that's sort of like that practical amount of gains that you can like roughly accurately track down. And of course, like it will never exactly pan out like that. um but just glanced at your log. It's a little bit challenging anytime that you transition between phases, like cutting to maintenance, maintenance to gaining. So like the first 2 weeks are often going to be like a bit of a shit show, and that's just going to get more and more hectic depending on like basically the more drastic the shift, the more hectic it's going to be. So if you go from cutting to bulking, it's going to be a hefty increase oftentimes, but it's not because you put on fat or whatever, but it's just simply because like all those like non-body tissue gains that you make initially, like gut content and water and whatever. So like we had a little bit of that with you. Otherwise, now where the hell did I put my? The problem is I have like a billion spreadsheets open at any given time. So, yeah, but yeah, basically like beginning of gaining phase, you were 159.2, and right now you're 161. I mean, this week's weigh-ins just started, but yeah, I mean, so far it's going well. It's just like the actual amount of time in which we could actually like track what's really happening has been relatively short. Because like, if you've been gaining for 4 weeks, in my mind, that's really like 2 weeks to 3 weeks. I mean, it's like beginning of the fifth week, right? So then 2-3 weeks of actual like trackable gaining time. So we will have to take some looks at how things are going forward. But I think from what we've seen so far, it's pretty evident that we didn't mess the estimations up too badly with the calorie targets. Yeah. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much agreed with everything you said. Yeah, we
Mm,
seem to put me in about like a 200 calorie surplus.
yeah.
And that 159 weigh-in was actually one day after I started the bulk. So I saw like a 2 pound kind of shift just in one day even. So I was more so ended the maintenance phase at about like 157, I would say.
Hmm.
Uh, and then we saw that initial spike, and then it seems
Yeah.
like now we're on a pretty much on that pace, like you said, like roughly two pounds a month. We'll have to see at the end of this week, but yeah,
Yeah, actually, I think we didn't even mention that. Like, people like body weight related talks. So you started the cut at like 185 ish, like a week, maybe two, like 2 weeks of it or something was before we started.
yeah,
So maybe together, like it started more like 180, and you ended up at like 155, 156, right?
yeah. 156 was I think I had one weigh in 155, but 156, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Which was a little bit lower of a weigh-in than what one would predict, just based on like a relatively decent body fat percentage estimation and body weight. So like one would have expected you to finish a little bit higher, but it is like that with everyone, simply because you just lose more lean body mass than what would be expected, but not because you lose muscle. It's because water is lean body mass. Um, so there's that, and
Just one thing I can comment on that. I definitely felt the effects of that because when I would sit by the end of it, when I would sit down on a hard surface, it would actually hurt because I think I lost so much fat from everywhere, and obviously some of it is gonna come off like the glutes region. So it felt like I was almost sitting on my bones by the end of it. That was a
yeah,
weird side effect that I noticed.
yeah. It's interesting. I don't remember having that, but probably just because of that. Did you have that heavy leg feeling? I don't know if we talked about that. Like this, like my legs just felt so heavy near the end of these. Like just walking was effortful because I needed to drag these aluminum legs around.
No, no, I actually felt like I could sprint. Like I felt super light
Mm,
on my feet. Like I
yeah.
felt like I could like run. I used to run cross country before. I felt like I could do that again. I felt more athletic actually.
You see, there you have the difference once once again. One of us has a hard time getting up from the couch because the legs are too heavy and you feel like sprinting. So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
could.
yeah. So, yeah, then for like to close this off, so obviously we need to manage both, your preferences or the client's preferences and what I think is best. So ultimately, what you would like to happen is going to happen, because like it's your body and your goals, not mine. um and obviously I'm going to advise you based on what I think is best, but you will make kind of like the decision based on those two things. And so I think that in order to maximize your potential, sort of like in the most time efficient way possible, what you would do in that case is like you would do a long bulk, which I mean, nobody is better set up for that than you are because you're very lean. Also, you have the gift of not being this like super like constantly hungry person, food focused person. So you can really take your time and take advantage of each step of the, you know, progression from like super shredded to like just lean, and then like still like reasonably lean, and like all the way to like a slightly higher body fat percentage. So I mean, you could have like a, if you can just imagine the progression from like, let's say 7% body fat until 20, I mean, that's a huge gap. And I mean, really, if you're putting on maybe like 2 pounds a month, sometimes less, maybe sometimes more, but like around there, I mean, you know, you could be putting on like what, like a single percentage body fat or less per month. I mean, that's, even if you put on a percent every month, that's, you know, 13 months long gaining phase, which is huge. So you could be making a lot of gains, and just imagine like the productive training you could be getting in that time frame. If you then combine that with a couple of mini cuts here and there, like maybe like every 2-3 months, just throwing in like, you know, 10 days, 14 days, something like that, that's a lot of productive training and a lot of productive bulking days and weeks. So that's kind of what I would have advised in that case. And then even then, like after that, then you wouldn't be immediately cutting down to like 7% again. You would maybe cut down only to like 13 to 15%, and then gain then maybe up to hopefully only to like 20-ish% body fat again, but heavier than what you were before. And like always staying in these like very low effort in terms of diet management, hunger management, but really productive in terms of training, like in these kinds of zones. That's what I would advise in that case. Now, someone who settles as low as you are in terms of body fat and it has such an easy time with dieting, probably this whole like zone can be shifted downwards to some extent, and it might be as productive. From like a betting man's perspective, like what's the most likely to be successful? Maybe I would still err on that higher end of the phase, but still all of that needs to be balanced with your preferences, which are, yeah, can you maybe just touch on that now, and then like then we can discuss where we actually settled at the end.
Yeah, so I mean, from a preference standpoint, like of course, like you want to stay as lean as possible, but it's about finding that balance with is like you said, like what's going to be most productive versus my personal preferences. And I think at least from the with the near future, with my outlook of wanting to really see my potential, I've I'm okay honestly with putting my preferences on the back burner and putting what's going to get me to, I guess, my natty max in a sense as efficiently as possible. So I'm honestly okay with pushing all the way up to, I mean, the percentage is arbitrary, but whatever it is, like 19, 20%, just it's more about the time frame of productive training. So whatever body fat I end up in a year from now, I'm okay with that. It's more I want to get some good momentum and some good runway. I'd honestly prefer to do as little mini cuts as possible because I'm a big like momentum person. So it's gonna be, I feel like it'd be difficult for me like mentally to like cut unless I'm getting shredded. And it'd be difficult for me to gain unless I'm want to get super strong or super huge. I like these more extreme goals. So I guess that could be more of my preferences from like a mental standpoint. So I'm totally on board with pushing honestly as much as we can within health reason, of course, but for the next bit and from a gaining perspective.
Yeah, and as we touched on it before, like I mean, as in like you and I, not on this podcast, but like sometimes you need to be comfortable with not knowing exactly how things are going to pan out, because like, you know, we could plan out the next year, like week to week. And I'm sure you're also one of those people. Like I could easily spend an entire afternoon just fiddling around with a spreadsheet, like, and then on this month, like this is gonna happen, and like this is how much body fat I'm gonna be gaining, and then you know you can plan all of that out. But like I've never seen a person for whom it exactly work out like that, because like guess what, you can't see a year ahead in the future like what's gonna exactly happen. Like who knows, maybe like you're like a car is gonna run you over on a crosswalk. I mean, hopefully not, and like most certainly it's not gonna happen, but like um you say you're not a fan of mini cuts, and I'm not either, all as being equal, but all things are not equal usually. So sometimes there is just like a very, very convenient time to do it, and it just makes so much sense. Maybe you also feel like it mentally at the time. So, everything just lines up perfectly for that then. And then you do, let's say you do like a 2 week long mini cut, and you drop like, 2% of body fat, which is great because then you have like basically like a bunch more time to gain, and you're not any closer to that, like a tentative like cutoff that you have in your head when you wouldn't want to get fatter than that. So it's pointless to plan things out too precisely, like too far into the future. But yeah, it luckily at the end seemed like you were quite comfy with the idea, at least, that like you would push things until things are still productive and things still go well, and you're still not like too disgusted with either from more food or from what you see in the mirror. um and yeah, man, like I think that if you really nicely nail down these next couple of years, I mean, uh I think you said to me at one point that like, yeah, so maybe I could still gain like another 10 pounds. I wouldn't promise this, of course, or like I wouldn't like say this under oath or whatever, but honestly, I think that you could gain more like 20 pounds, like if I'm looking at just the trajectory of things, and like your shape and what you have been doing so far for how long. I just don't really see why not. Of course, like time will tell, and um, I could be off by a couple of pounds. Um, but I'm speculating that is going to be closer to 20 still than to 10. So I do think that there is like still huge amounts of potential uncovered. So I'm actually very excited. Like I feel somewhat privileged because I feel like I'm with you. I'm interacting with like some future influencer, hopefully not some douchebag, but still some big name in the industry. Because I mean, you definitely have a lot of gift and potential. Um, so it's on you to make the best of it, right? So I'm glad that I'm able to assist you in some ways.
Yeah, I guess from like a projection standpoint, it seems like I guess, I mean, whether you want to believe it or not, it seems like the naturals in the industry that are around my height that are at the top, they seem to be around that like 170 to 180 mark. And based off, like, let's say I was one shredded at 156, add another 20 pounds, it's right in that ballpark. So I
Yeah.
mean, I see the same for myself, hopefully. And I think with this new kind of mindset that I have in terms of being more committed to the gaining phase, I feel like I held myself back a little bit before. So I feel like the progress in the next few years can be accelerated if I can mentally stick with the plan and not deter just from wanting to get lean in the near future.
So yeah, just as I promised in the beginning, just we are gonna spend a couple of minutes discussing Humza's Natty status. I'm sure there will be some people who by now will already have commented with some like crying, laughing emojis that like Natty, please, or something like that. Like I have no doubts about that. So let's address that, and maybe let's address where this has gotten the most hostile, which is on Reddit. So please take it away. What happened there?
Yeah, so I've been a part of these like Reddit communities in a sense for quite a while. And for those of you who don't know, it's basically just like a community where people post different things. There's definitely ones that are more, I guess, educational, and there's ones that are more kind of for like entertainment. So there's one even that's called Natty or Juice, and it's a thread just about people posting people's physiques, and everyone comments Natty or Juice. And someone actually posted me on there. I didn't even post it myself. But this one that I shared personally was just a transformation collage. It was just two sets of pictures of my transformation from 16 to 20. And I kind of wanted to just share it because I was turning 21 like a week after this. So I just wanted to recap like the last 4 years. Um, and I didn't give too much context just because that's not like really what it's for in a sense. It's more so just kind of it's the first one I posted on was called like it's just for transformation. So that's what the point of it is. It's not really for giving advice or anything. So I just posted my transformation, and I did give the context, though, however, about the height and the weight. So that's why I was a bit surprised with the reaction because I prefaced that I'm 5'10", 160 pounds. So to me at least, I couldn't I can't really conceptualize how you look at those stats and then think that it's not attainable like naturally. But yeah, the post got a lot of traction right away. I think right now it's at like 150,000 views or something. And the comments right away were just immediately hostile. Like right away was a bunch of people like doubting me. A lot of the arguments that I was seeing were you can't maintain a body fat that low. And then we just discussed a whole thing on set points, but a lot of people don't understand that. So that was one argument. Um, Another one was just like the vascularity and the striations. People also apparently think that you can't be vascular and natural, and you can't have striations and be natural as well, apparently. And then of course, I chose the pictures where I look the best, right? I'm not gonna choose pictures where I'm like flat out of bed, with no pump and shitty lighting. I'm not gonna choose those pictures. Of course, like anyone, I'm gonna display my best pictures. But I also, I attached my Instagram to my Reddit account, which has pictures of me in more normal settings as well. So if anyone really did want to investigate, they could see me in multiple lights, not just in the gym with the sick pump. So if people really cared to like investigate that much, I think it would have been pretty clear. But I guess most people right away they just saw it, and then whatever they thought at that time, they just typed right away.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just looking at these comments and I'm like, I mean, I'm past the anger part at this point because like I've been there enough time, so I'm desensitized at this point. It's just the it's more amazement at this point. So like I'm gonna comment on like the pictures themselves in a second, and I'm not gonna start like a huge rant. It's more just like a calm comment that I'm looking at the first comment and it's bruh, like lie on Insta and TikTok, but why try lying on here, LOL. So and 1.1 thousand people liked it. um so first of all, like 1.1 thousand people, like wow, like it's kind of scary, but like it's the thing that bothers me maybe the most about these is just like the confidence. So this person, it's not accusing, like it's way past that at this point. Like this is like stating it as a fact. So it's like the even the possibility that he might be wrong like doesn't even cross his mind. So that's the thing that's the most amazing to me. So like maybe you're actually not dumb or ignorant. Well, you're definitely ignorant, but maybe you're not actually dumb. This might be an intelligent person. It's just so I guess just reckless or so careless. Yeah, all right. So let's talk about your picture. So I'm gonna cut in what you posted on this Reddit page. The before picture. So like, were you like untrained? You were training for some time, or what is your status on these?
Like 1 week into training.
And before that, like, were you doing some sports or something at least?
Yeah, so I was playing ice hockey for like 8 years.
Okay. And so that's a pretty tough sport to begin with. And I mean, I'm guessing you have some stuff that you do there, like some push-ups or something.
Um, a little bit, but most of it was endurance type of stuff.
Okay.
Nothing, no weight training.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, to me, the most telling, and I said this in the beginning of the podcast, but if I look at the images and I go when I can see you from the front, but I can just look at your left shoulder, and I can sort of immediately explain how it's possible that you look like this on the after picture, because you just simply have the structure for it. So are your shoulders impressive and relatively capped, but I wouldn't say that it's anything. So actually, like, what would be insightful, I should remember to do this, is to put up my picture from when I was like this. So this was like almost 10 years ago at this point. And I am skinny and pretty unimpressive. Very sadly, there is no human on this planet who would get anywhere close to accusing me of using gear. And actually, our shoulders look pretty similar. And you can sort of just imagine, like, if you were to put my shoulders there on your clavicles or like on your bone structure, um, it would actually look pretty similar. So, like, the only difference between you here and me 10 years ago is that you have just a wider structure than I did. So, like, but it's clear to see, even when you were like, what, 16 years old, right? Um, Not a lot of muscle on you at all, but the basis for all of this is already there, and it's pretty clear to see. Um, Now, and another thing I want to say on this is that, um, so you have a very good physique. You are very muscular, compared to like 99.9% in your age as well. And yes, the back is way, way above average. So that part is kind of freaky. From the front, you are very impressive. But if I take away the bone structure side of things, I have seen people with this much muscle, even your age. So that I will say. With your bone structure, yeah, definitely above average as well. But one thing I will say is that you're also very good at taking photos. So that should be mentioned as well. So if someone goes on your Instagram page, like, even just there, like, you will see some photos where it's pretty obvious that you're natural, because you see that, for lack of a better term, like I like Mike Israel said this once when he was on my podcast, and it just kind of stuck in my mind because it was just a very good phrase to use. That natty flatness, which happens to people as they get lean. So even though you can see the structure, you can see the muscle, you can see the leanness and the definition and everything, but there's just that deflated look of the physique that is very characteristic of a natural lifter with a very good physique. And that's one of the main differences between enhanced and natural lifters, is that uh, enhanced lifters basically look like they have a pump on all the time. Like that is just one thing you can observe. Like, I have never seen like some of these people where, like, I'm pretty convinced that they are enhanced. Like, I've never seen a video, a picture, like anything like that of them, no matter how lean they were, when they still didn't look like thick and like filled out, at a certain point, a natural lifter can only get it either with a very good pump or after like a very good carb load. And you have that on some pictures, probably with a pump, or like after being carved up or whatever. But you do have some pictures where you don't have that. Like, any comments on that? Because I have one more thing to say on that, to like really drop the mic. But if you have any comment, please go on.
Yeah, you can even put up on the screen. I have a picture of the same back double bicep pose in natural and just regular lighting, like no food right out of in the morning, that I still put up on the Instagram just to show people kind of a more realistic look of my physique. and then you can kind of even put it side by side towards one in the same pose after the gym with a pump, and then you can kind of see that discrepancy that you were talking about.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not gonna lie, like when you first wrote to me, I think you reached out to me on Instagram and like about the coaching stuff. And like when I first looked at your physique, it was one where like I can see like only like half of your upper body, like kind of from the side. Like it's a very good, like pumped up angle, perfect. And my first guess was like, oh, like is this like like some teen, like slightly enhanced person? I think there was also one of your back, which was ridiculous. Honestly, my first thought was that you're enhanced. But then I saw more pictures of you throughout your cut. And then when I saw those, I was like, okay, this guy's definitely Natty. And I remember I sent, I mean, sorry, I mean, probably I told you this, but maybe I'm just admitting this to you now. But I sent some of your pictures, faceless, but I sent it to Brian and Dave just to show you, like Jesus, like, look at this kid and look at his structure. And I also told them that, like, yeah, at first I thought that he was enhanced, or maybe I sent them your Instagram page, like, like this guy is interested in talking to me, like I'm not sure, maybe he's enhanced, but let's see. And then when I talked to you, I sent you your pictures. I was like, okay, yeah, no, this guy's definitely natural. And look at this structure. And they were like, yeah, natural. But yeah, fantastic structure. Like both of them agreed. So there's a difference between someone who knows what they're looking at and these, just I mean, I honestly I don't know what to call them, like retards or trolls. I mean, really, like pick the worst
And
remark really and fill it in there.
I think me and Brian are the same height, and he's like shredded at like 185, I think. If I'm not mistaken. And that's like 20, that's like almost 20, 25 pounds heavier than what I'm at, right? So, and if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken, I believe he's lean at 185. Is that right?
So now I will have to double check. I believe that at 190 is basically where Brian is at the point where basically everything is shredded except his hamstrings and glutes look like that of a fat kid still. So I think to get rid of that as well, and then of course like his upper body will still get a bit leaner, but not like proportionally not nearly as much as his like hamstring glute area. I think for that he will have to get closer to like 180 ish, which
He's still 25 pounds heavier from my
yeah, close to yeah,
current kind of
yeah,
shredded weight. So that
yeah,
just puts into perspective like how much room I can still go, and also what's because he's obviously natural as well, right? That just shows that,
yeah.
oh, if anything, he's the one that should be getting accused right now, not me.
And the thing is that like Brian is probably accused way less than you even now at like 156, and it's simply because of the structure
Yeah.
difference, and your back. I mean, Brian has a fantastic back, but yours is a bit more fantastic already now because I mean that's your strong point. um and so I would actually guess that like when you peak, you will be something like Brian in terms of like weight, except I mean, if possible, like your structure is a bit better still. So yeah, I'm sorry, dude. When you will be peaked, you will get like more accusations than anything else. I'll say this: like you will definitely have more accusations in the bag than how many times you will have had sex by that time. So sorry to tell you that, but it's like people just don't know what they're looking at. So like Brian probably gets less accusations than you, whereas like yeah, he has quite a bit of muscle on you, um, and it's simply because of that bone structure that you have and that crazy V taper. Like it just looks not real. And I will say, I mean, like this is one of those things that's almost hard to say publicly because like you will be ridiculed, but I mean, but they are the ones that are ridiculous. I'm not saying that Lazar Angelov is natural. I don't know if he is. I will say, yeah, he doesn't look natural, but it's just good to realize that a huge chunk of that is that crazy midsection that he has, because it doesn't look real. Like it's too good to be to be true. Like people don't have these ridiculous symmetrical abs, but people also have to realize that that's not something that drugs can buy you. Like you could take like 20 grams of tren and inject it in your eyeballs, like you would still not have abdominals like that, because that is simply like how muscles attach. Like at best, a very good surgeon could get you that, but probably not even that. So anyways, it's the curse of being gifted. But really, like if nothing else, like you seriously don't think that someone could be natural at 5'10" and 156? So what's that in kilos? That would be, so no, it's
70, 71, I think.
71. Yeah, right. Because it's, yeah. So like so you seriously don't think that that is possibly natural? I mean, let me tell you this. The in hand, like the fake netties that you're worried about, like none of them are 71 kilos at 5'10". So they will be more like 180, 190, like
You know, Matt does fitness's stats because he's a very popular person who gets accused a lot.
um so the problem with Matt Does Fitness is that I mean, the last time I even saw a picture of his was like a very long time ago now, because all my Instagram reels now are just like freaking like dogs, cats, crocodiles, sharks. Luckily, I disabled all the frog and snake videos. But so he is. I mean, people make fun of him because of this, but he actually looks pretty good still, even if he is, in terms of percentage body fat, is pretty fat. Because Brian is not fat when he's 190, but really, like, his hamstrings and glutes actually look like that of a fat kid. So if he was like maybe like 20% body fat, he would still look fantastic compared to how I would look like at 20% body fat. I think that he's like 6'1" or 6'2". I think he's more like 6'2", because he walked next to Eddie Hall, right? The power lifter guy or strongman guy. And I think he's 6'3". And I even seen him being measured, and like they're roughly the same height. So I would guess that he's at least 6'2", even though one time I saw 6'1" being listed. And then I think that he's like between like 90 and 100 kilos, so like 200 to 220 most of the time. Um, which,
Much, even if you take the height, even if you balance it out with the height difference, he's much heavier than me.
yeah, that's he's a big dude. Yeah.
I think
Um,
well, someone's height and weight that I know for sure would be like Greg's Kino bodies.
yep.
So he's 5'10", and obviously he inflates his body fat percentage a lot, but I'd say when he's actually as lean as I was, he's like 170, right? Which is still like 14,
Yeah.
13, 14 pounds heavier than me.
Yeah, you're
So
similar actually, now that I think of it. He has maybe his arms are a bit of a better feat,
yeah, he
but
has, yeah,
your back is beating his any day of the week. So
if you know Joe, do you know Joe? Are you familiar with Joe Delaney as well?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so he's my height as well, and same thing. He's like 170 shredded as well. So it seems like a lot of guys around my height are around that weight.
Yeah, and then I think that Kino Body had a bit of a jump in weight, which is when I think a lot of people scream drugs. But I think that was mainly just that he started training legs a bit more, because like he had for a very long time, like his leg training was basically like 2 sets of pistol squats, like once a week or here and there. So then
Yeah.
he started taking it a bit more seriously than that, and also doing some like deadlifts here and there and whatever. So then he went up to like more like 180. So there was that. Um, yeah. So I think all of these, like Kino Buddy, Brian, like I would guess that you will be something similar in terms of stats. Um, but I would also think that like you will actually be more impressive than them because you have that structure. Like Kinobody has a good structure, but it's not like yours. Like Kinobody never had a 29-inch waist, I think.
Yeah.
So
I think someone that you can look at that has the structure and the decent muscle building genetics would be something like a David Lade. He's
yeah,
nothing crazy from a height and weight perspective. He's 6'3" and he's like 190, 195, which is not not too
yeah,
heavy for that height at all. Whether he's natural or not, just from an attainability standpoint, right? But
yeah,
he looks so freaky because his waist is probably 27, 28. So
yeah,
when you and he has the exact same kind of shoulder, like you mentioned before with the collarbones, like having those hanger kind of shaped um collarbone that gives the shoulders that like crazy V taper. That's what makes him look ridiculous. Even though he's a little, on the lighter side for his height compared to other people.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I agree. Like I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's using, but yeah, you're right. Like from just an attainability standpoint, it's yeah, not it's not at all something that like no human can possibly achieve. Like no, like not even close. Like Jesus. Um, so yeah, people just yeah, you just gotta learn more about this shit. Seriously, like just you gotta learn what you're looking at. You gotta be exposed to more people. Just get out of your mom's freaking basement, or at least first finish high school or something. Like just educate yourself a little bit. Don't be so confident and arrogant, because people like you are very very annoying. Like most people are like these people, like super confident, whereas they really shouldn't be confident, because like they don't know anything and they think that they are the smartest thing ever. So yeah, just try to do a little bit better than that, seriously, and don't be so freaking abusive. Like anyways, so man, I think we should wrap up here. Actually, it's 9 p.m. over here, and at 10 the stores are closing, and I still haven't bought food today, and I'm actually been eating some really shitty food lately, so probably it's time to make up for that. But yeah, man, I think this was really really cool, so thanks so much. I actually abused your time quite a bit, um but thanks a lot for doing this. Yeah, maybe just let people know where they can find you and check out what you're up to, whatever, if you want.
Yeah, so you can just link it in below, but I'm pretty active on Instagram, so I post a lot of like physique progress and workouts and stuff like that. So that's probably the best place if you want to like follow along with my journey, would be Instagram right now. And then hopefully within the near future I'll have a YouTube as well.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, definitely. Definitely, yeah, you have a big future in this. So yeah, YouTube, Instagram, one of these platforms is where you're probably gonna be rocking it. So yeah. So this was the first podcast that you've ever done, right? So
Yeah, ever done. Yeah.
please remember me when you're a famous and rich influencer. Mention me here and there.
Maybe one day I can bring you on my own podcast.
Yes, please,
Yeah.
please. One day remember to help a friend. Just kidding.
No,
Uh,
I'll definitely always, wherever I end up landing, I'll always remember my first coach, of course.
yeah, except if you join some like psycho cult or something and you're like some whatever going around burning people, then don't remember me, please. Or don't mention me, please.
No, it was a very strategic choice when I decided to like actually go forward with like working with a coach, because it was
Mm.
just something about like your content specifically that it always like there's always that general fitness advice, but it seems like with you with your type of stuff, you'd always every time I'd watch a video, there'd always be something that I never thought of before, or like it always kind of gave me like a new perspective on something. So I think it was like kind of that where it's like I feel like if I had an opportunity to like pick your brain and work with you one on one, that I knew that I would be able to gain a lot out of that experience.
Oh, thanks, man. That really means a lot. So yeah, yeah, it's been It's been a pleasure doing this together with you. So, I mean, hopefully we will keep collaborating. But I mean, whatever happens, I mean, we will be in touch. So yeah, and I'm really glad you reached out because it's it's been very educational for me as well. Also, just pleasant. I mean, it was nice doing the whole like cutting thing. You always asked nice, like reasonable questions, and you it's always refreshing when someone is trying to be independent as much as they can be, and when they are asking questions, it's not just
Stuff you
trying
can
to
Google, right?
sorry.
Like when like I like it's you don't want people asking questions that you can Google and stuff like actual intellectual questions, right?
Yeah, and like it's fine. So like you paid for this, so like it's fine to use me instead of Google. That's not necessarily my issue. It's more so just when I feel like it's either just like pure like laziness, like I already actually like sent you the answer. Like you would just need to like scroll back a little bit or open something that I sent you. It's all there. Um, or sometimes like I get the feeling that okay, so like I paid for this, therefore I'm gonna make him pay for that back by, So yeah, basically just laziness. Where I feel like, okay, maybe I got paid, but at the same time, I feel like I'm being, I wouldn't say disrespected. It's not that serious, but a little bit like the effort that I put in putting together the program for the client, for sharing information, it's for nothing because it's not being looked at even. That's what's actually bothering me. And I never got that feeling with you, but it's always still like a nice reminder that it's worth doing this because it can be a very fulfilling experience from my end as well. So yeah, so right back at you. Thank you as well for coming along.